10 months after renowned botanist Dr. Nora Hensley vanishes while studying plant memory in California's Humboldt Redwoods, her camera is discovered buried beneath a root system, containing over 1,000 identical photographs of a single leaf. As investigators unravel the mystery, they uncover the work of Elias Korn, a forest caretaker obsessed with imposing symmetry on nature. What began as Nora's search to understand how trees remember time spirals into a psychological nightmare. A battle between scientific curiosity and pathological control, where the human need for order becomes indistinguishable from madness. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end, and if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. A steady drizzle drifted through the Humboldt Redwood Reserve, beating across the moss-dark trunks like threads of glass. Dr. Nora Hensley, 38, trudged along the narrow research trail, recorder clipped to her vest, whispering notes into the small microphone pinned near her collar. April 10th, canopy density consistent with last year's readings. Air humidity 92%. Morning mist refracts perfectly through the lower crown layers. The forest feels slower today. She pauses, studying a fallen redwood leaf cupped in her palm, its thin veins glistening as though alive. The forest, ancient and unmoved, listened back in silence. 3 days earlier, Nora had arrived at the reserve gate in a forest green Subaru packed with field equipment, humidity gauges, UV meters, a Canon DSLR, and a case labeled Lamina Sequence Project Phase 2. The park ranger on duty, Caleb Rowe, checked her permit and asked how long she planned to stay. Caleb: "You'll be the only researcher out here this month. These trails close to the public during wet season." Nora, smiling faintly: "That's perfect. The fewer variables, the clearer the pattern." She camped near Site Delta, a restricted research sector deep within the reserve where the trees rose over 300 feet high, blotting out most daylight. Her field notes show she spent the first evening calibrating sensors, measuring the angle of light against a single chosen redwood, tree 27A, which she labeled Anchor. On April 11th, 7:42 p.m., she recorded her last confirmed audio log. Her tone is calm, deliberate, but curious, almost reverent. "If I can map light variations by one leaf, maybe I can see how trees remember time. The veins act like memory lines. It's beautiful. If I can capture its pattern continuously, it might reveal how it learns light." A pause follows, faint rustling, a low hum of wind through branches. Then she adds quietly, "It almost feels like the forest is breathing in sync with me." That's the final line before the tape cuts off. A pair of hikers from Arcata, logging off trail footage for a vlog, later report seeing Nora that same afternoon. She was kneeling by a fallen log, photographing a single leaf suspended from a spider thread. When they greeted her, she barely looked up. She was talking to herself, one of the hikers later told police. Something about intervals and patience. Her truck remained parked at the main lot, with the keys still in the ignition. By nightfall, a low-pressure storm swept through the region, winds snapping smaller branches, rain hammering the canopy. When the ranger checked her campsite the next morning, the tent was zipped from the inside but empty. Authorities found no sign of struggle. Her equipment was undisturbed, laptop open, a digital timer still blinking every 5 minutes, counting intervals. The notebook lay open beside the camp lantern. A neat sketch of a single redwood leaf filled the page, annotated with numbers, light measurements, and a final handwritten note beneath. Repeat observation until pattern appears. Her camera was missing. The only trace outside the tent was a single leaf, pinned to a nearby trunk with a silver metal slide clip, like a specimen display. The veins turned upward, catching the weak dawn light. Investigators photographed it before removing it, but later reported something strange. By the next morning, a new leaf had appeared in the same spot, pinned again, the same way, though no one admitted replacing it. Within 48 hours, the search expanded across 4 miles of dense forest. Drones were grounded by fog. Scent dogs lost the trail near a ravine where mist pooled like smoke. By day 5, the operation was scaled back. The lead ranger wrote in his log, "No signs of wildlife struggle, no torn fabric, no human prints beyond camp. She just stopped being here." The forest fell silent again. And beneath the hush of dripping branches, the unanswered question lingered. What pattern had Nora been waiting to see? It was mid-February, the wet season again. The Humboldt Reserve was half drowned in fog, each beam of sunlight slicing through like a knife through milk. Park Ranger Caleb Rowe, the same man who'd signed Nora Hensley's entry permit 10 months earlier, was clearing debris along the South Ravine Trail, an area newly reopened after landslides. His boots sank into the soft mulch, and the steady drip of water from the canopy made the world sound half underwater. He moved to cut through a fallen root mass and noticed a faint glint beneath it. Plastic, maybe glass, wedged deep in the soil. He crouched, brushing mud away, and uncovered a sealed specimen bag, dirt-caked but intact. Inside, a Canon DSLR, corroded at the corners, lens cracked but recognizable. The tag on the evidence seal read faintly in faded ink, "Property of Dr. N. Hensley, Lamina Sequence Project." Rowe froze. For months, he'd replayed their brief meeting at the gate, how her smile had seemed distracted but genuine. Now, holding her camera, he whispered, "Found you." The camera was rushed to the Mendocino County Forensic Lab. Technician Aaron Kotry, a digital reconstruction specialist, pried the casing open with surgical care. Despite corrosion, the SD card was remarkably intact, possibly protected by the waterproof specimen bag. By the next morning, the lab had extracted 1,004 photos from the memory card. At first glance, the images seemed absurdly repetitive. The same redwood leaf hanging midair from a tiny stem, the same frame each time. Kotry assumed it was a time-lapse sequence, until he checked the metadata. Each image was captured exactly 5 minutes apart, spanning 48 consecutive hours. From April 11th, 8:02 a.m., to April 13th, 8:06 a.m., the window during which Nora Hensley vanished. No motion detection trigger, Kotry told investigators. These were taken manually. Someone pressed the shutter 1,000 times. Detective Grant Lowe sat beside Kotry as the images flickered on screen in rapid sequence. The leaf, bathed in morning light, then afternoon shade, then moonlight. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but when slowed down frame by frame, changes appeared. Tiny droplets formed and vanished across the leaf's surface like beads of sweat. The veins darkened, then lightened again, shifting shades and patterns no one could explain. In several frames, the background light warped subtly, a faint distortion, as though the air behind the leaf had pulsed. "Could be shadow variance," Kotry said. "Or heat shimmer," Lowe countered. "There's no direct light source in that direction," Kotry replied softly. Then, the final photograph appeared. The timestamp read April 13th, 8:06 a.m. The image was smeared, a motion blur, and what looked like fingerprints streaking across the lens. The photo's metadata revealed a partial sensor imprint, as if the photographer's thumb had pressed directly onto the glass midshot. Alongside the photo directory, Kotry located a corrupted audio log buried in the card's file system, labeled Note B. After repair, the file contained a distorted series of clicks, breathing, and one repeated whisper, low and rhythmic, the voice almost childlike. "Don't move it. It breathes when you don't look. Don't move it." The phrase repeated 4 times before static consumed the rest. Lowe replayed it, volume low. The sound wasn't just Nora's voice. It had an undercurrent, a second, softer voice beneath hers, like an echo half a second late. He stopped the playback and exhaled. Was she repeating herself, he asked, or was someone repeating her? News of the recovered camera reached Dr. Samira Vega, Nora's research partner and closest friend at the University of Oregon. When shown the photographs, she pressed her fingers to her lips, shaking her head. No, this doesn't make sense. Nora was precise, rational. She wasn't prone to mystical thinking." She studied patterns, not superstition. Lowe slid the final image toward her. Could these be part of an experiment? If it was, Vega said quietly, it wasn't hers anymore. She explained that the Lamina sequence project was designed to measure microfluctuations in chlorophyll, the way light memory patterns affected photosynthetic rhythm. But, she added, scrolling through the photos again, these frames aren't measurements. They're devotion. Like she was waiting for something to change that shouldn't. At the university lab, Vega and Kotri ran a side-by-side analysis of every 10th frame. Subtle shifts emerged, the leaf's edges curling, the stem bending slightly, then returning to its original angle. But the surrounding environment, background bark, dust, moss, remained perfectly static across all 1,000 frames. Impossible, Vega whispered. Nothing stays that still, not even air. In the later photos, faint dark specks appeared on the leaf. Not mold, but uniform, grid-like spots, arranged in near-perfect hexagonal symmetry. It looked less like decay, more like a pattern forming, as if the leaf was being written upon from within. On the 1004th image, Kotri magnified a corner reflection caught in the lens. There, faint but undeniable, was the partial reflection of a face behind the camera. It wasn't Nora's. The frame captured a tall figure standing several feet behind her, blurred by motion, head tilted slightly as if observing her work. Its outline bent slightly, almost symmetrical, almost mirroring Nora's stance. Kotri looked at Vega. You said she worked alone? Vega's voice trembled. She did. She always did. The forensic room fell silent. The 1,000 leaves flickered in sequence again, a hypnotic cycle of life, light, and time, until Lowe finally said, "We're not looking at a study anymore. We're looking at what someone made her study." The discovery of Nora Hensley's camera reignited the dormant case. Detective Grant Lowe, now reassigned to cold case recovery in Mendocino County, reopened the file. He'd been a young field officer when Nora vanished. A skeptic then, still one now. But something about the recovered images unsettled him. 1,000 photos of one leaf, he muttered, flipping through evidence sheets. If that's a message, I don't speak the language. He started where the trail ended, the Humboldt Reserve permit records. The last signature beside Nora's was Elias Korn, listed as site caretaker and ecological contractor. Korn's name appeared again in an old disciplinary report from the State Forestry Department. Unauthorized experimental activity. Growth symmetry trials conducted without research oversight. Lowe jotted a note. Possible connection. Obsession with symmetry. Elias Korn lived on the edge of the reserve in a cabin that looked half reclaimed by moss. When Lowe arrived, the caretaker was kneeling in the yard, carefully aligning fallen leaves into a spiral that spread outward like a mandala. Lowe, you're Elias Korn? Korn, without looking up. People think forests grow wild. They don't. They obey. Lowe, obey who? Korn, anyone who listens long enough? Korn finally rose, wiping dirt from his hands. He was in his late 40s, angular, eyes pale gray. The cabin smelled of cedar oil and old paper. The walls were covered in pressed leaves, each framed, labeled, and arranged in geometric precision. Lowe, you knew Dr. Nora Hensley? Korn, knew of her. She studied what I practiced. Lowe, she's dead, Elias. Korn, no, she's preserved. The conversation chilled Lowe more than he expected. He asked about the last time Korn saw Nora. Korn smiled faintly. She came to observe my work. She wanted chaos. I showed her order. Meanwhile, Dr. Samira Vega was combing through the university's digital archives. In an internal file dated 6 weeks before Nora's disappearance, she found a formal complaint written by Nora to the Department of Ecology. Mr. Elias Korn is conducting chemical alterations to native flora, enforcing artificial geometric patterns. The results may damage the ecosystem and compromise data integrity. Attached were photos, Rows of young saplings bent and trimmed into near-perfect grids, leaves chemically hardened to maintain symmetry. Nora's closing line read, "He believes he's creating balance. In truth, he's erasing variability, the essence of life itself." Vega forwarded the documents to Lowe. He circled one phrase, enforcing artificial geometric patterns. Satellite records from the Forestry Division revealed an unregistered greenhouse located on Korn's leased acreage, a fenced sector labeled Plot Theta. When investigators triangulated Nora's final GPS signal from her smartwatch, the last ping was only 300 yards from that greenhouse. Lowe assembled a small field team and entered the area with a warrant. The place was a maze of glass panels, vines, and irrigation tubes, all eerily silent. Rows of saplings grew in mathematically perfect grids. Each plant was identical in height and angle. In the center of the greenhouse stood a circular table, and on it, a pressed redwood leaf pinned beneath glass. A nearby logbook bore dates from April 2024. One entry was underlined 3 times. Day 2. The subject resists pattern assimilation. Must be observed continuously until form stabilizes. Next to it was Nora's signature, shaky, inconsistent, as if written under strain. When confronted, Korn didn't flinch. He invited Lowe inside and offered tea brewed from pine needles. Lowe: "You were with her the week she vanished." Korn: "She wanted to see what balance meant. Most people don't." Lowe: "Her GPS ended on your property." Korn: "The forest doesn't belong to me. It decides who stays." Lowe: "We found your greenhouse. Her handwriting's in your journal." Korn, smiling: "She wrote willingly. She was trying to understand. They always do at first." Lowe leaned forward, voice flat. Lowe: "You drugged her?" Korn: "No, I aligned her." Further lab analysis confirmed traces of chlorophyllin compounds and growth regulators in the soil samples from Korn's greenhouse, substances capable of slowing organic decay and reinforcing plant rigidity. In effect, Korn had been trying to force nature to hold still, to suspend life in a perfect, unchanging state. Dr. Ma Vega summarized it best. He wanted to make plants obey geometry. He was trying to do to her what he did to them. Lowe requested a psychological profile. The report described Korn as exhibiting traits of obsessive symmetrophilia, deriving emotional equilibrium from mirrored order and punishing disorder as defilement. When police returned to Korn's cabin for a secondary search, they noticed subtle changes. The spiral of leaves outside was gone. In its place, a rectangle, sharply edged, each leaf positioned vein to vein. Inside, the air smelled of solvent and decay. Pinned to a corkboard above his bed was a photo of Nora Hensley, overlaid with transparent acetate lines tracing symmetry across her face, one half mirrored over the other. Beneath it, scrawled in thin pen, "She broke the pattern." Brought back in for formal questioning, Korn remained composed, hands folded neatly on the table. Detective Lowe asked why he'd hidden the camera. Korn: "She wanted proof. She said the leaf changed on its own. I told her nothing changes on its own, not without punishment, so she stayed until it learned." Lowe: "Learned what?" Korn: "Stillness." A pause. "She wanted chaos. I showed her order." Lowe stared at him across the table. The room silent except for the hum of the recorder. Korn looked almost proud, his eyes reflecting the flicker of fluorescent light like twin mirrors. "You'll see it too," Korn whispered finally, "when the pattern's complete." The room fell still. And for the first time, Lowe began to suspect that whatever happened to Nora Hensley wasn't only a murder. It was a ritual disguised as research. The warrant came through at dawn. Fog clung to the treetops like ghosts, swallowing the sound of tires on gravel as Detective Grant Lowe led a forensics team and environmental officers back into Elias Korn's property. They moved quietly, flashlights cutting through mist until the silhouette of the greenhouse appeared, a looming shape of fogged glass and black iron frames. The air was unnaturally still. Even the crickets seemed to pause. Lowe ordered the door forced open. It groaned like a living thing. Inside, a wave of chemical scent hit them. Sharp, synthetic, clean in a way that felt wrong. Rows upon rows of cloned leaves hung in thin glass frames, each backlit by pale fluorescent bulbs. They looked like icons in a chapel, a forest of stillness preserved behind glass. Lowe walked slowly between the rows. Every specimen was labeled with identical handwriting. Redwood leaf, subject A1, A2, A3, A1003. The numbering stopped at 1004, the same number of photos on Nora's camera. Korn had recreated the sequence physically, every leaf a frozen echo of Nora's last observation. Their veins, once green, had dulled to brown but remained unnervingly uniform, preserved with chemicals that made them glisten faintly. Under ultraviolet light, faint traces of symbols, concentric rings, symmetrical triangles, glowed on the glass surfaces, drawn with chlorophyll ink. A small plaque stood at the center of the room, etched in fine script. Stillness is obedience. Obedience is harmony. In the far corner of the greenhouse, a small monitor flickered, attached to an outdated camera rig. The display looped a single video file, sequence complete MP4. Lowe signaled the forensic tech to play it. The footage began with Nora Hensley, pale, exhausted, seated cross-legged on the forest floor. The same leaf from the photos hung before her, clamped to a clip. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the camera, words half-whispered, half-recited. He says if I capture it enough times, the leaf will stop changing. That's when it's perfect. I can't tell if it's day or night anymore. It feels like it's watching me. Her breath quickened. The camera tilted slightly, and for a brief frame, behind her, Elias Korn appeared, silent, observing. His reflection splitting across the lens into mirrored halves. The video stuttered, skipping frames, and ended abruptly with Nora whispering, "It stopped breathing." Crime scene techs fanned out, scanning every inch. Near the greenhouse center, beneath the main workstation, a patch of soil looked uneven, darker, denser, chemically treated. When they lifted the floorboards, the stench of formaldehyde and decay flooded out. Inside the compacted soil were layers of organic fibers, some roots, some hair, some unidentifiable strands with microscopic keratin traces. DNA analysis later confirmed what Lowe already feared. The fibers matched Dr. Nora Hensley. But there was no body, only the organic residues, as if the forest had slowly absorbed her back into itself. Lowe crouched over the exposed pit, flashlight beam trembling on the still earth. He buried her in the same soil he grew his order from, he murmured. He wanted her to become part of it. When the team reached Korn's cabin, they found him already awake, seated on the porch among rows of perfectly aligned saplings in small clay pots. Each pot bore a tag labeled Nora 1, Nora 2, Nora 3. The sapling's leaves all tilted toward him, as if turned by invisible strings. He didn't resist as officers approached. He simply looked up at Lowe with an expression of mild satisfaction, as if expecting him. Lowe, Elias Korn, you're under arrest for the murder of Dr. Nora Hensley. Korn, quietly. Murder? No. Proof. He stood slowly, raising his dirt-streaked hands. She proved me right. Growth can obey if you punish it long enough. Back at the Mendocino precinct, Korn sat under the harsh interrogation light, unmoved. Lowe placed a printed photo of the greenhouse before him. The 1,000 identical leaves. Lowe, you call that proof? Korn, that's peace. Lowe, you tortured her. Korn, I completed her experiment. She wanted to see how life remembered light. I showed her what happens when you remove memory. It stops resisting. He leaned forward, eyes flickering with manic calm. Chaos only breathes if you let it. I stopped it breathing. Lowe pushed the video transcript across the table. Lowe, she said it stopped breathing. That's the moment you killed her. Korn, no, he said softly. That's the moment it became perfect. 2 weeks later, forensic teams sealed the greenhouse. The preserved leaves began to decay in unison, as if responding to Korn's absence. The glass fogged over from the inside, the air turning damp and heavy with rot. By the time the evidence crew returned, the frames had collapsed. Every leaf crumbled to dust. Lowe stood outside under the morning rain, the ruin of the greenhouse behind him. The forest around him stirred in the wind, wild, disordered, unrestrained. He thought of Nora's final line, "If I can see how trees remember time." And he wondered if somewhere, beneath the roots, she finally had. 6 months later, the courtroom was filled with a silence thicker than grief. Elias Korn stood at the defense table, hands cuffed, posture straight, a man who looked less like a criminal than a preacher awaiting recognition. The prosecution called the evidence overwhelming. The video footage of Nora Hensley's final hours, the DNA traces beneath the greenhouse floor, the lamina specimens meticulously cataloged and preserved. Dr. Samira Vega took the stand, voice steady but eyes red from nights of replaying Nora's final recordings. She wasn't insane, Vega told the court. She was curious. That curiosity was used against her. He made her believe stillness was a kind of truth. When the defense argued Korn suffered from an obsessive-compulsive psychosis that rendered him incapable of moral judgment, Korn interrupted softly. "I was not sick, I was consistent." The judge stared at him for a long moment before passing sentence. "Elias Korn, this court finds you competent and guilty of first-degree murder. You will serve life without the possibility of parole." Korn didn't flinch. As the bailiff led him away, he murmured to no one in particular, "You can't imprison balance. It finds its way." At San Quentin, Korn became a model inmate. He spoke rarely, ate slowly, and kept his cell immaculate. Guards noticed that after every meal, he arranged the crumbs on his tray into perfect radial designs, spirals, grids, and mirrored triangles. If someone disturbed them, he'd simply start again, expression serene. During his psychiatric evaluations, he refused to discuss Nora Hensley or the greenhouse. When asked why he'd created so many identical specimens, he smiled faintly. "To teach patience," he said. "Even God repeats himself." Meanwhile, Dr. Samira Vega left the university. She turned down 3 research grants and redirected her energy into a project she called the Wild Memory Garden. With the help of volunteers, she began cultivating a clearing on the edge of Humboldt Reserve, near the site where Nora had vanished. Unlike Korn's symmetrical greenhouses, Vega planted with deliberate disorder. Wildflowers, ferns, vines, and redwood seedlings scattered freely, without alignment or design. "No pattern," she told the volunteers. "The wind decides." Visitors came from all over, scientists, hikers, artists, leaving single fallen leaves on the soil as tribute. They were never arranged, never touched after landing. When the breeze moved through the clearing, the leaves shifted, rotated, and sometimes overlapped in shapes no one could predict. Fleeting, beautiful, unrepeatable. A small bronze plaque marked the entrance, in memory of Dr. Nora Hensley, for the beauty that cannot be measured. Back in the Mendocino evidence lockup, Nora's camera sat sealed in an airtight case, its SD card stored separately. Detective Grant Lowe occasionally stopped by the evidence room, staring at it from behind the glass. He once asked the archivist why they hadn't wiped the data for good. The man shrugged. "Chain of custody, I guess, procedure." But Lowe sometimes thought it wasn't just procedure. Maybe some part of the system was afraid of deleting what it didn't understand. Each image remained the same. A single redwood leaf, caught in stillness, its veins shifting in microscopic variations that could be coincidence or memory. And though every frame appeared identical, digital analysts later discovered one final image that differed slightly. In the last frame, the leaf stem bent, subtly, almost imperceptibly, toward the edge of the frame, as if reaching toward something beyond it. They never determined how that was possible. Months later, Lowe visited the Wild Memory Garden. He found Vega kneeling near a patch of young redwoods, her hands dirt-streaked, her hair tied back under the afternoon sun. Lowe: "They're growing fast." Vega: "Faster than I expected, but never the same way twice." Low. Do you think she'd like this? Vega, softly. She'd measure at first, then she'd stop measuring. The wind stirred then. A sudden rush that sent the leaves tumbling across the soil, scattering the patterns into chaos. Low closed his eyes. For a moment, the motion of the forest sounded like breathing. That night, inside his cell, Elias Korn woke to the hum of fluorescent light. He rose, walked to the wall, and began scratching faint lines into the paint. Perfectly spaced, perfectly mirrored. When the guard checked on him an hour later, the pattern was complete. Two mirrored spirals meeting in the middle, the shape of a leaf vein. Korn stood motionless before it, whispering, "She moved again." He smiled. Outside, far away in the reserve, a gust of wind swept through the wild memory garden. And for a heartbeat, every leaf turned the same direction. If you found this story haunting, share it. So more people remember Dr. Nora Hensley, the botanist who vanished chasing the secret of nature's memory. And if you ever wander beneath the redwoods, listen closely, because some say the forest still breathes when you don't look.